The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 3 of Lean Into the Community webinar series. We have two panelists today that will talk about different aspects of businesses being open right now during COVID-19. It's actually coming at a very good time with the virus starting to hit a little bit more in Connecticut towards the end of this month. You know, sometimes we need to look at how we're running our businesses, whether they're essential or even non-essential, working remotely, to determine if we're doing the right things. So the two panelists that we have today will talk through some aspects of what you need to be thinking about when you have remote workforce and the technologies behind how you can get that workforce working more effectively and efficiently, as well as if you do have to keep your doors open, we have a panelist that will talk about how to do the proper sanitation and keeping your staff as well as the public safe. With that, I will go to the next slide. So I'm your host, Wendy Austin. I run a digital marketing company here in Connecticut, WSI Healthy Digital Solutions. I joined the Midstate Chamber of Commerce in February and didn't have a lot of time before everything kind of blew up to get out and do networking, but I've been, active with Rosanne and talking to her and wanted to help out my other Connecticut businesses. So I'm helping to put together this webinar series and hopefully share a lot of information for Connecticut businesses in general. Our next panelist speaker is Santiago. He is a founder and CEO and president of IT Direct, a Hartford-based technology services firm that helps businesses harness the power of technology to achieve their business goals. The company has been awarded many awards over the years for growth, service, and workplace culture. Ari is a dynamic and passionate speaker on topics that range from cybersecurity basics to high-level business strategy. He was awarded the Hartford Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award and has been chosen as a board and committee member for several nonprofit organizations around the greater Hartford area. So Ari, with that, I'll let you take it away and talk about remote workforce.
Sure. Thank you so much, Wendy. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure talking to everybody today and have an opportunity to maybe help you think about how to use technology in your businesses. Going through obviously what's a pretty rapid and impactful change in the business environment and business climate. So the first thing I wanted to lead off with is everybody's situation is going to be a little different. All of our businesses are a little bit different. How we service our customers is a little bit different, and how we drive value is a little bit different. So I think getting some specific guidance from IT, whether it's internal IT or your current partner or whatever that might look like, is going to be really important to navigating this correctly. And I think we're going to have some opportunities for Q&A. So I'm gonna talk and kind of give you my thoughts on kind of where we're going, big picture, and some down and dirty specifics that are general, should apply to everybody. But I look forward to answering any questions. And so if and when we do get to the question section, please don't hesitate to ask very specific questions about your specific business or situation. I want to make sure that you get value out of this, and you'd be surprised a specific question you ask that might not seem like it would impact others could drive a ton of value to other people. So hopefully we'll be able to get people some good value today. So the first thing I want to talk about is I think it's important to note that the world has really changed. I believe that business is going to be changed irrevocably through this whole process. And I think a lot of that change is going to be a bigger embracing of technology. I think our inability to be together for health reasons is going to open up people's eyes to the opportunities to use technology more and get them a lot more comfortable with it. And I think that can present a lot of opportunities for our businesses going forward. And so as we go through the process here, it was hard, especially over the last month and a half, to think about the future. But now as we're starting to see the state government and the federal government start talking about the opening up of the economy and what it's going to look like, now's a great time to start thinking about how we can leverage technology a little bit more into the future and what these changes could mean to help us be more efficient, be better to our employees, and be better to our customers. So just want to encourage everyone to take what I say and then really think about that on a go-forward basis. So where are we today, and if we want to stay open? The first thing I encourage everyone to think about is it's always enticing to start thinking about technologies. Oh, give me a list of technologies. What technology can I use for this or use for that? And I really encourage our clients and people I talk to really think about business process first. Thinking about what we do today and understanding what that is and how it drives value to our customers is going to be critical to putting together a good technology strategy. And it's much easier to say, hey, this is how we drive value. This is how we used to do it. And this is how we're going to do it in the future. That process is a much better way to get a good, clean outcome than trying to take some technologies and figure out how to retrofit them back to your business. So what I recommend is literally getting a piece of paper or doing it on your computer and making a list. Look at the list of the services or the products or whatever the value that you provide to your customer and write those down, right? And we probably can get those off of proposals that we've done or our own websites or what have you. But generate that list, right, of all the different services that you provide, and then try and understand, okay, in today's world, based on working remotely or having a limited amount of staff in the office or our inability to go to customer sites or the inability of the customers to come to us, here's the gaps that are preventing us from delivering the value we delivered before the coronavirus crisis hit. And then taking that list and understanding what technology is possible to fill those gaps. And some of them are partial fills. So I'll give you an example. If you're a dental office, it's a real struggle right now, right? Dentist offices have to be closed. And even if you were to look at trying to do something digitally, you can't do a filling or a cleaning or put in a crown digitally. So, but there are some things we can do. And so, teledentistry or telemedicine is something that can be done. And then thinking about, okay, well, what technology would I use to make that happen and trying to map that out, right? And so like a DoxyMe, for example, might be a great way to do that there. If you're a therapist, right, that would be another example of somebody where they can't come to you, but you could really develop a very strong, telepresence for therapy that actually might be something that would be great long-term, right? So similar initial challenge, but different long-term way to fill the gap and maybe different technology as well, right? Do you need audio and video or just video? So just recapping that, I think it's important to start with our list of services or value that we provide to our customer, identify the gaps we have today, and then start consulting with people to figure out the technologies that you would need to fill those gaps, right? So that's, I think, the most important thing to work on. And then you need to execute those plans. And so I think I'll give you some sort of technology recommendations to think about, when you're looking at connecting. So one of the things that people often talk about is collaborating with their existing employees. And so we probably had a bunch of Word documents or Excel documents or all that stuff. And how do we share that stuff? Are we emailing it to each other? Is that going to be an effective way to do it? Probably not. And so I think we need to look at file sharing and communication, internal office communication technologies. And I really strongly recommend that all businesses, if they weren't looking at Microsoft 365 before, or also called Office 365, if you weren't looking at that before, that would be a critical product line to look at, and really adapting to use more than just the email platform portion of it, which a lot of people were using and already know about, but use a lot of the other components. And so things like OneDrive for Business, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, are really going to round out a platform that can allow us to work extremely efficiently, even when we're not near each other. Another one that we've been talking a lot about lately is video conferencing. Video conferencing is so important. When we can't meet face-to-face, a conference call just doesn't provide the same level of communication and connectivity, with each other as humans, as a video conference does. And I'm sure many of us have heard over the years people say that communication is like 80%, body language and only 20% kind of what we say. And so losing that 80% without a video conference is a real challenge. And so I think it's important to think about, okay, well, we need some video conferencing. What's the right video conferencing technology that we need to use? And I would encourage everyone to think that, it might not be a one size fits all for every situation. For those of you that haven't been paying attention, Zoom has become extremely popular. But what's also become clear is that Zoom is not strictly secure. It does not have end-to-end encryption. And so it really, in many business environments, for example, medical environments, unless you have the HIPAA secured upgrade, you really can't be using that, for medical visits. It's not ITAR or NIST compliant. So if you do manufacturing work in the government or defense supply chain, you got to be careful and not use Zoom for those type of meetings. And so that's where you might want to look at something like a WebEx is one way to do it, or what I was referencing earlier, which is Microsoft Teams. So again, going back to that Microsoft 365 platform, building off of that, we can use Microsoft Teams that can do video conferencing both internally as well as with people outside of our organizations, and do so in a secure way, which is super critical. Another thing that people are really taking big time advantage of now is improving their online banking and online financial transactions. And so, many of us maybe were doing online banking before, but we weren't using a very streamlined online way to manage our billing. And so Bill.com, as an example, is something that integrates, with QuickBooks, which is a very widely used business platform, and can really streamline our management of our accounts payable. So that's important. But now we're also probably thinking about accounts receivable. How do we get cash into our business? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at ACH payments. And there's some opportunities there with Bill.com and some other platforms that allow you to accept payments internally, either via ACH or electronic check. And I would recommend kind of looking into those, so we're make sure we're taking advantage of technology to streamline our systems, including collecting and sending in money. So let's also talk about remote access and how we might access our internal systems remotely. And again, this is a case-by-case basis, but there's a lot of technology out there. So if you have an office where people had desktop computers in the office, but now they're working remotely and they didn't have a laptop, you could have them leverage their home computer, right, to remote into their work computer. And so there's opportunities to use things like remote desktop. You could use a third-party platform like LogMeIn or Go to My PC that allow people to access and work off their home computer, much like they were sitting in the office, even when they're remote. So certainly want to look at stuff like that. And you can use one screen, multiple screens, even when you're working remotely. So there's a lot of opportunities to be very efficient, even when you're working, working remotely. And those technologies tend to use limited bandwidth. So even if you don't have fantastic internet, you can still get some work done. So certainly recommend looking into that. I want to just two more quick items I wanted to touch on. The first thing is right now, cybersecurity, which has been a hot topic for a long time, is something that I think we need to take even more seriously right now as we're changing and moving into these different work environments. And I've talked about some new technologies already, but I think we got to be careful that we're paying attention to cybersecurity throughout this process. So as your new systems you're starting to use, it's important to ask the question about security to make sure that the new stuff you're putting in isn't unnecessarily or unwittingly putting your business at risk. And so let me give you some quick tips on cybersecurity. The first thing is communicate. So the people that are working in our businesses need to be made aware on a regular basis about the increased risks in cybersecurity right now. So some examples are fake Zoom domains that have been registered and these fake phishing emails that will encourage people to join meetings that look real, but they're fake websites to be able to load malicious software onto your desktops to try and steal information or steal access to your accounts. And so it's important that we remind people that, listen, take a moment, make sure you read the email and identify that it's from a known source and it was something that you were expecting. And if it's not, call them and just check on it, and having that communication up front before people have a problem is going to be critical. And then reminding them of it. Hey, we did start using GoToWebinar as an example, but if the email didn't come from Wendy, make sure you don't do that. And remind them, hey, we would never get an email that asks you to put in personal information. So if an email comes in asking for your username and password or prompts you for that you weren't expecting, that's a huge red flag. Make sure you call IT before you put that in. Very much better safe than sorry. Another thing is, as we're signing up for these new platforms, is we want to remind people not to use simple passwords and not to use the same passwords. So if you're using your login and email address to sign up for a GoToMeeting or a LogMeIn, don't use the same username and password combination that you use for your bank account. Because you just never know that even if you don't give it up, if the platform gets hacked and your username and password gets out, one of the things that malicious actors will do is try using that username and password combination on other websites. So getting away from using the same password in multiple locations is going to be critically important. And relatedly, reminding people not to use simple passwords. Most sites right now don't really let you use a simple password. It should have to have capital and lowercase letters as well as numbers. But it's important to remind people that, don't use your name, your kid's name and date of birth, things that people might easily guess. Just a really good best practice to use some unknown piece of information and really try and make your passwords as random as you can. And if possible, using a password management tool like a LastPass or a RoboForm that can help you generate random passwords and save them really be a big benefit and increase in security to do that. And finally, on the security front, multi-factor authentication. Many of us have had that experience where we go to our bank or some sites, and after we log in, we get a code that's sent via text message or something like that to our phone to put in. And that's what's called a second factor. And so multi-factor authentication is a system where you don't just have a username and password, but you have another piece of information. And a lot of places are using this now with applications or text messaging. And it's important that when we use systems that are critical, we put multi-factor on that. So payroll processing, bank accounts, financial institutions, important vendor relationships where we can have deep credit lines or we can order stuff online. Those are places we want to try and have multi-factor authentication. And wherever possible, if you're getting a VPN or remote access into your office, any type of access like that, we strongly recommend something that has multi-factor authentication to avoid people we don't know gaining access to our corporate networks, which could cause a lot of damage. Even if they don't steal any information, if they were to take those networks down, that in and of itself can cause some serious damage. I think that was the last thing, but I will say one other piece, which is what we have seen is a lot of people rushing to get set up, and they start using free platforms, whether it's Google Drive or free Dropbox or other things that are not paid for, to start sharing their business information with their different employees because it's something that they knew from residential or someone told them about it and it's free and easy to set up. And I think it's important to go back now and take a look at those platforms and understand what risks are to your business by having platforms out there like that. And, we have seen an unfortunate example where, people allowed staff to use personal accounts to start using corporate information. And then some theft was identified, and the data that they needed to track that down was on the person's computer in a personal account that they couldn't get access to. And so now there's a fight over who has access and is it corporate information, and someone saying it's deleted. And so it's just it's important that we keep track of our corporate information and don't lose sight of the fact that in an effort to be speedy and fast, we may have made some decisions we need to rethink. So important stuff there. And I know we're moving into another phase of the crisis. We're sort of getting into what I've been calling the abnormalcy phase, right? We're not so much in the rush of trying to figure out what's going on, but many of us are sort of settling into this new normal or this abnormalcy. And so I think now is a time where we're talking about training and enhancing. So let's say we've picked a video conferencing platform and we're using Microsoft Teams or whatever we're using. Now is a good time to start sharing information about how to use video conference effectively, right? Lighting is important. And basic tips like if you're on a video conference and you have a bright light behind you, whether it's recessed lighting in the ceiling or a lamp, the webcam has a hard time focusing on you. And so you'll notice people kind of get dark and light and dark and light, and it's very distracting. And so by simply turning off the light behind you, you may see a big enhancement there. Obviously, even better would be lighting on the other side of the webcam. But certain, stuff like that, also helping people understand how to use the mute and the unmute feature effectively, and how a leader of a meeting can actually mute everyone up front. And we've been, for another example, is when we're having meetings with customers or doing sales presentations, which we're helping people do online a lot. It's great to start the meeting with explaining how we're going to manage the meeting. Hey, we're starting off, everybody's going to be on mute right now during the presentation. If you have a question, put it into the chat and telling people how to use that, and have someone else in your company monitoring the chat. And so if the question is appropriate to interrupt, someone has the authority to say interrupt and say, oh, Ari, excuse me, we've got a great question, coming in from Aracely, and kind of get that going right in the middle, or keep the question, to the end. But just sort of the training on that etiquette, for example, of how to use video conferencing to really help people use it better. Same thing with file sharing. So I talked about Microsoft 365. So a lot of people didn't realize that once you share the files, people can actually work on them at the same time. And so going back and showing, how 3 or 4 people can be inside the same Word or Excel document and collaborate on it simultaneously, and showing them how to do that, or teaching how to share with people outside the organization, but doing it in a safe way. Or another example is screen share. So if I want to review a presentation or look at a website with somebody in my company, before I might have them come over to my desk and look over my shoulder. Obviously that's a challenge now, but almost all these video conferencing platforms allow you to share your screen. And so making sure that people understand, you can share your screen, and the difference between sharing a screen and sharing an application, so people don't inadvertently, share the wrong thing. So some new trainings, I think are really positive there. And then the last piece, I wanted to leave you guys with is just maybe enhancements. And I think a lot of the platforms have tool sets or features that we don't know about. And so a lot of us are getting to a point in the business environment where we're this new abnormalcy period. We're maybe not as fully functional as we were before. The demand from customers isn't as high as it was before in many businesses, but hopefully we've applied for the PPP program. And so we've got this like breathing room where we've got this cash to keep payroll going. So what can we do? And I think now's a great time to look at enhancing, what are some of the projects technology-wise that we left behind and we didn't do because we just didn't have the time? Or what are some of the platforms we're using right now that might have features that we don't have? And so allocating some of our, human capital resources that are helped to be paid for through this government program to find ways to enhance our business, so that as we start coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, we actually can find a way to get some advantage, some long-term benefit, from this period. And I know it's hard to connect what's happening with benefit, but I think there really are some opportunities here. And I think companies that look and embrace those opportunities will be well served and well suited to meet customer needs when we get out of this. So hopefully that was a good primer, and I shared some good information to help make people think, and look forward to having the opportunity to answer some questions as we go through this.
Thank you, Ari. And yes, so if you have any questions, like Ari mentioned, you can always put the questions into the questions box, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your mic if there's a question that you feel would be hard to try to type up. However, I do have a couple of questions that came from people that will be viewing this later. So you had mentioned the Zoom and the security. What is your recommendation about conference calling versus Zoom?
Conference calling meaning audio
Yeah,
calling
just
instead of
audio
hearing the
versus
Zoom?
using Zoom.
Yeah. So I guess there were two things on that. Is I think most of the quality conferencing platforms will include audio in the paid version. So, for example, I mean, the paid version of Zoom, by the way, does have audio. You could set up a, Microsoft Teams I'd mentioned. If you get the upgrade there, I think it's an extra $4 a month. You can get a audio conference number. And then when you send out the meeting, if you just don't include the web link, they can just dial in and you can use an audio conference there. WebEx could do that as well. Same thing with this GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting platform. If you just send out the dial in and access code, you can use that. So I'm partial, Wendy, to having less platforms than more. So if we can kind of enhance one of the platforms that we have, I think, to do audio and video, that would be ideal. And I'll just add one more thing, which is if you're not interested in doing video conferencing or it's not something you're into, your phone provider, if you call them, they probably could add a audio conferencing option to your existing phone system, for a pretty reasonable fee. Obviously that wouldn't have the video part, but if you don't want that, you might be able to do that without even having to worry about the video component.
Okay. Another question that I had captured before this meeting. So with the being able to work remotely, the problem is the office phone still rings in the business location. So how can they effectively forward that office phone to different people so they're not just forwarding it to one person and that one person's getting overloaded with phone calls even after hours?
Yeah, that's a huge, it's a really good question. So here's what I would say. I would say if you don't already have voice over IP capabilities with your existing phone system, so first thing I would do is contact either your IT company or your phone, or if not your phone vendor, and ask them if the current system supports a voice over IP or VoIP, VoIP expansion. If it does, then you should be able to buy some phones and put them at people's homes, and then they should be able to add the office phone number to that so multiple people could answer. If you can't do that, or it gets prohibitively expensive, one of the other things you could look to do would be very quickly buy, a voice over IP like application, like trying to think of a good example, which is escaping me right now. I can give you a name afterwards, but you could buy like a VoIP solution online, like maybe Grasshopper could do it. There's some other ones I can give you a full list, but you could do is buy a voice over IP line, which you can add the app onto someone's smartphone, and then forward your office calls to this new voice over IP system that multiple people could answer. And they're affordable, with the app. You're probably looking at, I don't know off the top of my head, but maybe $15 or $20 per month per line. So, if you wanted 3 people on it, it'd be $60 a month, and then just forward the office line to that. And you could have multiple people ringing, or that's one way to kind of work around it in the short run. One little pro tip: if you do forward your office number, the best way to do it is call the phone company and make sure you ask them to forward and enable forward on busy. Because a lot of the mistakes that people make is when they forward their phone from the handset itself, it will only allow one call forward. So let's say you have multiple people calling. The first person that forwards, if I answer it, anyone else that calls gets a busy signal. Whereas if you have a forward on busy, it'll keep forwarding, so multiple calls can get through.
All right, great. You talked a bit about the personal email versus business email accounts. This one came in before you started talking about that, but the question really is, should we forward business email to personal accounts? And I think since you kind of already touched upon that, could you expand your answer a bit to talk about people that may have just 1 or 2 employees, or they're a family-owned business?
Well, yeah, I mean, family-owned businesses could still be quite large too. But I think listen, I really discourage the forward to a personal email. I really, really, really strongly discourage that. There really shouldn't be a reason that I can't check my work email when I'm not in the office. You know, if I don't have a work computer, I should be able to go to a web portal of some kind and see that email. I just think it can be dangerous because once we forward that out to the personal email, we really lose control of that from a business standpoint. And, you know, I guess it depends on the business to some extent, but, you know, to me, once you start forwarding to the personal email, then I'm replying from my personal email. So does the communication go off of there? And it just opens a lot of questions that I think puts a business at risk. And there's not a big cost associated to be able to check my work email from anywhere, or there shouldn't be. So, you know, if your email platform doesn't allow that, I would ask a lot of questions because it should. I don't know if I expanded enough on that, Wendy, but if someone else has a question deeper on that, please ask it. But the answer is I do not encourage, I actively and strongly discourage forwarding work email to personal email.
Okay, one last question and then we'll move on to Aracely. And of course,
Sure.
if anyone has any questions that they would like to have answered that they haven't put in yet, we can take all of the questions at the end as well. But the last question before we move on, are you seeing a lot of businesses being hacked right now?
Yeah, so I mean, the amount of attacks on business is absolutely increasing, especially what's called phishing or spear phishing attacks, emails that pretend to be someone that they're not to try and get information from you, which is, you know, what a phishing attack is. Spear phishing is just a very targeted one. And I would say this, you know, we're always trying to deliver value not just to our clients but to the employees that work there. You know, one thing I would be, you know, cautious, and we're seeing a big uptick in, is fake emails offering jobs. And I mean, to me, that's just like the dirtiest of all dirty, which is taking someone who's maybe been laid off and then trying to get them to give you their information in an effort to theoretically get them a job that then you just try and steal their money. So we are seeing a big increase in attacks in general, and just people trying to take advantage of the situation. So critically important that we're extra vigilant right now.
All right, thank you. And of course, if anyone has any other questions, you can type them into the question box and we can answer. Ari, if you can stick around, we'll have another question and answer session later. I do want to move on.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. I do want to move on to Aracely. Aracely is a business owner of a cleaning service that right now she is helping and is one of the what I would consider also health heroes on making sure a nursing home is being kept safe. And so I wanted her to come on and talk a bit about, you know, the proper sanitation guidelines right now, and what you could be doing to keep not only your staff as well as your public safe if you open your doors to the public right now.
Thank you very much, Wendy, for the invitation, and also thank you very much, Ari, for covering and bringing such valuable information to the community. Like Wendy mentioned, my name is Aracely Pena. I'm the business owner for Conchita Cleaning Services. We've been providing services through Connecticut for the past 15 years. And yes, we are providing right now an essential services to a nursing home here in New Haven. And it's very critical. It's a critical moment, a critical time that we should know how we can respond to this. How I train my staff is I always let them know, you prepare to respond to recover. How can we do that? It's steps to follow. I am a strong believer of making sure that everywhere that we go, not just in a nursing home, but everywhere that we go, we are exposed to all different things, to all different, you know, viruses, germs, etc. And keeping not only ourselves, you know, healthy and well-being, making sure that you bring into the workforce is bringing, you know, letting them know the rules, the regulations, the proper protocols that's going on right now. The best way to train your staff is to let them know, try to avoid, make sure that you do social distancing, practice, constant hand washing, avoid anything that can make you want to touch, your face. Avoid touching your face, your eyes, your nose, anything like that. I always give them a call. Would probably go on a call every single day in the morning just to go over the rules. I'm probably sure that my staff is like, okay, the daily routine, but it's just that critical and that important that, for my employees to be safe. Not only are they trying to keep our residents safe, but they're trying to keep themselves, safe, and to bring everyone around us with safety and precautions. This virus can be spread very easily. A lot of people think that, okay, we are going to clean and disinfect. Isn't that the same thing? No, it's not. Unfortunately, cleaning is not the same thing as disinfecting. And I learned that through many webinars, many conference calls, a lot of studying, a lot of getting to know all this information. How do you clean, or how do you disinfect, or what are the steps? What is it that you have to do? Cleaning is it's basically your number one step. You clean, you make sure that you're taking whatever dirt, grime is off the surfaces. That's something that you do on a regular basis. It's the same thing as, a person would do early in the morning. What you're going to do is brush your teeth. You can't just walk out suited, go to work without, preparing yourself. I always tell them, make sure you prepare. That's the reason why we go on these steps. We prepare to respond to recover. Preparing, like I said, and I mentioned, cleaning the surfaces, high touch surfaces. We never think about it until now, that the high surfaces can be doorknobs, light switches, countertops, handles, desks, phones, keyboards, sinks, faucets, anything that you are constantly in high touch rings. Making sure you disinfect that, not only just for your workplace, but for the rest of whoever is going to come in contact, or being able to expose to those surfaces. A lot of people say, how can I do this, or how can I disinfect? How can I clean? If right now we are running so low in all these cleaning products, what can I do to make sure that my staff is up to date with everything? Thankfully, we have a supplier, EVP, that has tremendously holding a lot of our supplies down for us, make sure that we stock up on all these cleaning products and everything that we do. But if there is no solution to this, and you become unaware of, okay, I can't get to a disinfecting product, what can I do in order to keep on disinfecting meanwhile the products come in? A lot of people think, mixing bleach with vinegar, that will help it, or bleach with soap. It won't help. Mixing anything with bleach or mixing anything with ammonia, that's only going to create an explosive of a chemical reaction. You make sure you don't do that. Make sure that you use, water with soap. Then that you can do that. You can dilute the vinegar with water. You can dilute bleach with water, but never mix any chemicals. Making sure that when you're disinfecting, the area is already cleaned in order for you to disinfect. You disinfect by letting the proper solution sit on the surfaces, sit on wherever you're disinfecting. Make sure that you let it sit for at least 60 to 90 seconds. If you're just cleaning, spraying, cleaning and wiping, you're not letting the proper sanitation process to happen. It's like you're just going and cleaning for no reason, sanitizing for just a waste. So make sure that that's something that, that your employees, your workforce, your area, wherever you guys are doing, that's something that you want to make sure that it's being instructed, not only to your employees, but to everyone. Make sure that you're disinfecting, like I said, letting it sit there for a while, making sure that everything is just going to be at reach of disinfection, that it's just being monitored regularly. Cleaning of clothing. For us, my staff that works on a daily basis here at the nursing home, I recommend them always bring extra set of clothes, or even at home, leave a dirty hamper or, your bin that you put your clothes in. Make sure that there's a trash bag there. You take off your clothes before you can go inside your home and try to, hug your kids or hug your family or, etc. We never know what we're coming in contact. Make sure that you put your dirty clothes in a bag and then put it into wash with hot setting of temperature water. That's something that, it has to be done. How do we clean? For example, how would we clean and respond if the building or the facility has someone sick there? Obviously, you would close off the areas. Right now that days are becoming a little bit more warmer and everything. I would suggest opening up the windows, making sure that air can just ventilate through the system. Make sure that nobody goes into that room within 24 hours of whoever has been infected by this coronavirus. Making sure that if they are sick or if an employee becomes sick, they stay home. Like Ari said, communication is a key that, having that communication between your employees, your staff, whoever is, around you, brings so much towards work, towards the environment, towards everywhere that you're responding to. Like I said, I educate my workers, I educate my employees from cleaning to laundry to trash picking up, making sure that they are aware of the symptoms, making sure that they are aware of, what should we do if, a patient of us gets sick. What are the proper protocols? What are the proper steps that we should be taking? A lot of this information, you're able to find it in the website as OSHA.gov. I love OSHA. They actually are giving out free tips. They email them to you, free tips on a daily basis. Every day is just one tip at a time that they're giving to you as a business owner or as an employee. And it just reminds you on a daily basis, like I said, something new, something to carry on, something to inform. Like I said, not only to you, but also to the whole community out there. I also get my information from the cdc.gov /coronavirus. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of posters that you can be posting on your work fields, whether you're still in business and you're working and you have employees there. If you post it constantly where your sinks are, making sure that they're constantly washing hands, practicing social distancing, making sure that they have the proper equipment for them to do and practice and make sure that they can do their job that they are relying to be done. And also, if you're wondering, what can I do or what can I check in order for me to have the proper disinfecting chemicals? If you're running out of them and maybe you don't have them in a store that you're looking for them, if you go to EPA.gov, there's a list of disinfectants that also you can always find absolutely everywhere. It tells you how to dilute it, what you can use on what surfaces, and all those things. Right now is just a critical time, a very critical moment that we're living in. But practicing, the hand washing, the social distancing, making sure that it's always constant cleaning of high touch surfaces. It's something that we should always keep in mind. Making sure, I know that they just passed a law that it's required by everyone using a facial mask. Unfortunately, we're running out of facial mask and gloves and a proper attire because everyone needs it now. Nowadays, it's just so hard. I have personally had started making facial masks, and it's amazing to know that you can actually make them out of a coffee filter and a breathable cloth. I care for my employees. I care for them as much as I can, and I want to make sure that I can provide them with the proper and etiquette stuff. But unfortunately, there's times that we don't have those resources. What can we do? How can we prepare? How can we respond? And how will we recover from all of this? And like I said, unfortunately, this is the virus that we're fighting against, and we can't visually see it. But how can we prepare it is by cleaning, disinfecting, making sure that everything is, kept up to date, up to standards, up to, the regulations and what is it that they're looking for. At this time, I would probably say, Wendy, if there's any questions or anything that, anyone would like to ask or have an answer to a question to be responded.
Yep, I have two for you, but I also wanted to bring up the resource links page just so that people can see the different resources around the guidelines from both the CDC and OSHA. So I've brought that up on the screen. But for you, Aracely, how often the question is, how often should we completely wipe down everything?
So basically, once you clean it and you disinfect it, so it's a two-step kind of a thing. So you clean by making sure that your surfaces don't have, any dirt, any grime, or anything like that. How do you do that? Is with soap and water. Once that has been taking place, then you go ahead and you disinfect it. You disinfect it with anything that has, 60% of alcohol, anything that you can think of. Like I said, a lot of people are just saying, oh my goodness, I don't have anything right now to disinfect. What are my other solutions? What is it that I can, what is my other backup resource? Bleach solution is one of them. If you have 5 tablespoons or 1/3 of a cup of bleach per gallon of water, that helps you right there. You let it sit for 60 to 90 seconds. Once you clean it, you make sure you don't go and, redo it again. How often? I would say, depending on the work field that you're working on, us as residential care services providers, we try to maintain the common areas as clean as possible. The residential rooms by themselves, we clean it twice a day, morning and in probably early evening, just to make sure that, whatever has been coming in and out, because there are some rooms that are being shared and there are some individual, resident rooms. So the ones that are being shared, which is two beds per room, those are being a little bit more monitored just for the safety. One is touching this, the other one might touch it later on, and just to keep that, balance in between. If it's just, something that, okay, I'm here, if I'm working by myself in my office and I can only clean it, I would say cleaning it once and then doing it before leaving. Twice, it should be, ideal.
All right, great. And I think, what you're basically saying is that high traffic areas or high use areas should be cleaned more often than others, if I could summarize.
Yes, definitely a little bit more to be paid attention to. I mean, we're constantly, whoever's on the phone is, constantly bringing it to the face. Yeah. Whoever's sitting on a desk, sometimes they look at me and they're like, oh, can I use your pen? And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that looks at me weird. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, there's another pen there. Not that I'm trying to, I'm just trying to be cautious from not being able to spread any germs or anything like that, or, to receive them as well. As soon as they're done with that, with the pen, using it for either signing in, signing out, or anything, I disinfect it right away. Again, that's something that is more high traffic areas. Again, like I said, the sinks, the table surfaces, I mean, that's light switches, they're constantly turning on and off, on and off. Those are something that we should be a little bit more aware and more mindful of how we should, protect ourselves from everything.
Okay. And one other question for you. What products do you use to disinfect?
So what we use, I actually use them from the, like I said, I use the vendor EBP Supply Solutions. And one that actually caught a lot my eye, like I said, this is something that it was brought to me when I first started getting into it. I was like, well, cleaning is the same thing as, disinfecting, but yeah, no, it's not. There's actually, like I said, it's called Oxivir. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. It's OXIVIR wipes. And those are my disinfecting to-go wipes. And they also have, the disinfecting, it's very similar to Clorox wipes. That's something that we keep high in demand and on the supply list that it's basically needed. But I would recommend anyone that is, looking for a supply brand or anything for disinfecting, I would go right ahead and say Clorox wipes is your to-go. Lysol, Lysol spray disinfecting is also great. Pretty hard to find right now these days. It's so hard. Like I said, if worse comes to worse and there's no more, resource where you can find all these cleaning products or anything like that, if you buy bleach, or if you have white distilled vinegar, that would also help. It's just diluting it, making sure that everything's okay. That list for the EPA.gov, again, that's another list. That's another resource link where it provides you a list of all these disinfecting products. Like I said, I personally use the Clorox bleach white, and I also use ones that are used for the facility for a nursing home facility, as we are provided. Again, like I said, we're provided and we're supplied by EVP Solutions.
All right, thank you. I think I'll add that to my resource list before we send this out. I don't see any more questions. If you have any more questions, or if you want to raise your hand, please put those into the question box. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rosanne to give updates from the Midstate Chamber of Commerce. Of course, we have the link to the resource page, and I'll let Rosanne take it over and close out the webinar today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday to all of you. And I certainly want to extend my thanks again to Wendy Austin for coordinating this great series that's been provided a lot of valuable information, and we are very grateful for that. And I thank the panelists today. Again, appreciate all of the great and timely information. We've created a special resource page for businesses at midstatechamber.com. There's a red tab at the top that you can click on. We are really trying to update this as much as we can. And this week, I did receive some new and interesting information for additional funding that is coming out through entities such as Facebook, and NAV is another one. And also the U.S. Chamber has opened up a small business fund, and applications will start being, applications go live for that on Monday. So you will find those links out there. It's the SCORE Resource Hub that also is marked new. You'll find some interesting information on that page. SCORE stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. We work with them regularly in terms of providing workshops and counseling for small businesses or people thinking about going into business. So if you were to go on that page and scroll down a little bit, it does talk about some of the funding packages or funding programs that have been available. Please note that some of those, due to extremely high demand, have been closed. But as you do scroll down, you will see information on, again, the U.S. Chamber Fund. There's a Facebook fund that is offering up to $100 million in grants for small businesses. NAV also has a small business grant contest. So, again, these are additional resources that are coming out, and we will continue to update you on new things, but also update you on current programs as well. I also want to note, and please tell all your friends, we don't have the link yet, but we will be doing a special webinar next week. That's going to be on Thursday, April 23rd, and it will be a program only in Spanish for our Hispanic business owners and Hispanic business members. That will include information from the SBA with Julio Casiano. SAMA will also be on the call, which is the Spanish American Merchants Association, and HEDCO, the Hartford Economic Development Corp. There are also additional funding relief packages for women and minority businesses. So that will be the focus of that program on the 23rd. That'll be at 1 o'clock. And once we have the link, we will post that on our events page. We'll also get it out on our Facebook page. And that is all I have for updates today, but please continue to check our site, check our events calendar for updates on webinars and other programs, and also like us on Facebook.
All right, great, thank you. We have another webinar on Tuesday at 1 p.m., same time. That webinar will be around determining business insurance coverage during this time, and when we are looking to kind of our spending right now and how much spending or outgo is going on versus income that's coming in. Sometimes it's good to relook at that business insurance. So we'll be focusing on that on Tuesday, as well as there's been a lot of questions around claims due to COVID-19. And so we have some experts that will talk a bit about whether or not you can actually make any claims. So stay tuned for that. That would be our 4th session of the series on Tuesday at 1 p.m. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.